I'm going to start this
recording in progress.
It might prompt you to like accept. Sometimes it asks someone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I had to move my phone to do that, but you will edit that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Hopefully I can answer all the questions.
You're going to be great. Awesome. Well, Beverly, I think that the easiest place to start is if you could please introduce yourself and tell me about your role at Graebel.
So I'm Beverly King. I am Vice President of Business Development and Consulting for EMEA and APAC. And I'm responsible for sales and business development across all of the EMEA and APAC region. And I joined Graebel in 2018.
In 2018. And were you working in the mobility industry before that?
I was, but not as a service provider. So I was actually on the HR reward and mobility side. So I was a corporate client, and I was corporate client, and I moved over to Graebel, having got to know Graebel as a client first.
Oh, so Graebel used to be a client of yours?
Indeed, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. How are you liking working on the client side, working for Graebel?
I'm really enjoying it. I mean, 3 years in, so I stayed, so it's got to be good, right? And it was the first time for me to not be in HR or the corporate world and be on the service provider side. And I'm really loving like that different aspect of work and kind of especially the mobility piece.
And when you started your career, did you always have aspirations to become an executive, to work at an executive level position?
Really not, quite far away from it. In fact, I started with my university degree intending to be a French teacher. So I went and studied French at university, spent a year living and working in France, teaching kids aged 11 up to 20, and I was only 21 myself, and just decided that it wasn't really for me. At the same time, I got into business and I was working in a family company, helping a security company to kind of do things like recruitment and payroll, onboarding, recruitment, and I really kind of got into the HR side of things and decided that was the way I wanted to go. So abandoned the teaching thing and decided to start applying for business roles. And the executive bit is kind of just, happened and evolved over time, but it's never been in my head that that's my aspiration.
What do you think positioned you as a good candidate for that executive role?
Gosh, that's a really hard question. I mean, for me, it wasn't really, to be honest, expected at that point. I was just really enjoying what I was doing, loving the company that I'm in, feeling like I was making a difference, because where I'd come from in the corporate world, I just was another number. Whereas at Graebel, I felt like I was really part of something, doing things for part of a bigger picture, if you like. And yeah, I think that it was just a nice opportunity at the right time. I was kind of thinking, what's my next step, preferably internally. So yeah, it was just, I got asked and that was it.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's weird. It was, yeah, I guess it's just, it was never in my head. Like it's not in my head. I've never really had probably guidance, like as I was growing up, from my parents about like what's the direction you want to go in. And like my career has kind of evolved organically over time, and the next thing's kind of presented itself, the next opportunity, and I'm quite open-minded, and yeah, I'll look at the options and think, right, that's for me or not.
I like that. I think that's a little bit of a different trajectory than maybe some of the women I've talked to so far. So it's nice to hear that there's a variety of pathways to get into these more senior executive positions. You talked about kind of guidance, and it sounds like you've had some good, more organic opportunities for leadership and growth. But I'm curious, how has Graebel supported your growth into this leadership position?
I think having lots of different people available to kind of counsel me or mentor me along the way. So I'm quite ambitious isn't the word, but I'm a bit of a self-starter, and I like to kind of get involved, ask lots of questions, learn and develop myself. So I always kind of pushing for like what's the next thing to learn. So it's like who can I link up with to help kind of guide me in the right way? Like how do I get to know what Graebel's about? How do I understand what we need to do for our clients? Where do I want to grow myself personally? So asking internally and with various colleagues, like who's the right person for me to talk to, and I've had different people at different points through my 3.5 years here, that I can lean on and ask questions. Like a mentor kind of role, really, informally. It's not a formal thing, but just someone that I can meet with, every now and again, talk about what I'm working on, or where I want to go personally or developmentally, and help coach me. And sometimes I coach myself, but I want to hear, ideas from someone else as well.
Right. Nice to have someone to bounce things off of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, as a company, Graebel's always, well, at least within the work I've done, is kind of like if you have an idea or a suggestion or something you want to do to develop yourself, you ask about that idea, then there's encouragement to kind of take it on, to take on another project, or to push yourself in a certain direction, or take a certain course, or something like that. So I think that's also something that's really positive, where all of us have been able to, or various different people have been able to push themselves and take new responsibilities on.
Yeah, that's great. Um, I know you haven't been with Graebel for it's been 3 years now, right?
3.5
Um,
years, yeah.
3.5.
January
So,
2018.
oh, okay. So you're coming up on it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, maybe, I don't know if that you'll have an answer for this, but I'm curious, if do you think that leadership has changed within Graebel in the time that you've been there? And if so, how has it changed?
Um, yes, it has, in some respects, and then maybe not in others. And what I mean by that is, when I started, it was, kind of all about Bill Graebel, and Bill Graebel was the face of everything. And over time, we've seen Ron Dunlap, develop into his now role as CEO, and as president, sorry. And others have stepped up as well, like Matt Brownlee most recently. We've seen, people like Casey Phelps come in to take on responsibility, for all of EMEA operations. Then Monique Caster, who's responsible for all of account management in this region EMEA as well. So they're new, kind of new developments, and if you like, leadership was more male dominated. Now, it's really nice to work alongside fellow females, and see things changing. And we've had a big focus on DEI in the last couple of years as well, which I'm really passionate about too, and I'm also really involved with. And I really feel like that.
What DEI is? Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
I
Sorry.
was just going to say, would you mind explaining what DEI is? It sounds like you're
Yeah.
passionate about it.
Oh yeah, sorry. So DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So some companies say diversity and inclusion. Some people just say diversity, but we say diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's about really, having a sense of belonging, feeling like you're equal within the organisation, that there's opportunities for everybody, and that everybody's on an equal playing field, if you like. So, yeah, there's lots to be done, don't get me wrong, but I think you have to have the leadership buy-in, and we definitely have had that, and they're helping to push a lot of that agenda. So it's great to be involved, regionally as well as globally.
Yeah, absolutely. How would you say that the mobility space is primarily a male dominated industry?
It depends where you look. So in companies maybe like a Graebel or other RMCs, then there are certain RMCs where you'll see more female, leaders and kind of leadership. Within corporate roles, there's definitely a lot of females, and a lot of the clients I talk to are female. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously a tradition, in most companies, not just RMCs, not just corporates, where leadership is, board level, very much more male dominated. So I would say that's not something peculiar to mobility. It's just, unfortunately, something that's happened, and has been there over time, and slowly is changing. But obviously, it's slower than most of us would like.
Right. How would you say that that has shaped you professionally? That, you're getting to this more executive level, you're probably working with lots of men, and that's, as you said, typically kind of the higher up you get, the more men you see.
Yeah.
How do you think the experience of being a woman in that space has shaped you professionally?
I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of can be daunting. And with age comes maybe more confidence. And I think as well, having the courage to kind of push yourself and push the boundaries, of your way of thinking, and also reassuring yourself actually that you might be right, and that a different view isn't always the right view, even if it's the dominant view. But I've been in scenarios where I've walked physically or virtually into meetings where it's been mostly men, and whilst they'll all try and make you feel welcome, it's always strange when you're the kind of isolated character within a big group. So trying to put your opinions across, when everybody's talking, and you can be like the quieter female, that can be quite difficult. So I've learned over time to assert myself a little bit more, not too much because it's not my character, but to get my voice in when I need to, or at least make sure that I get my point across. And if I haven't got my point across, then somehow afterwards with individuals or the group by writing. So there's different ways of doing it, but over time, once people get to know you and recognize your values, they'll ask your opinion, I think, as well.
And were you able to have other, female coworkers, or maybe females in roles kind of above you, if you will, if we're going to talk in that
Yeah.
hierarchical sense? Were you ever able to see like modeled behavior, or, learning from other women in the industry?
I mean, yes, there's so many different great leaders out there. So I always look up to kind of those, in all sorts of like levels, actually, not always above me, but sometimes you can see a really strong character who's equal to you, or, a level or two below you. It doesn't have to be on the same level, but, you can model yourself on certain behaviors, the confidence. I think, one of the things, I'm British, so we're quite humble, we're quite quiet, and we're not always, we're always very polite and not always good to kind of speak out. So whereas typically in an American culture, people are very, easy at giving their opinions and speaking out. So that's also a cultural thing, not just a kind of a gender thing either. It's a bit of both. But yeah, I think over time, as I say, the more you kind of develop your confidence, get to know other people, get the trust, and then just see other people's approaches and see, oh, that might work for me, and I'll try that.
That's great. I love that you brought in that cultural piece, especially as Graebel is, a global company. I think that's a really interesting element to consider. I'm curious, just talking about other women in the space with you as well, how do you see women leaders in either the mobility industry or at Graebel specifically? How do you see them supporting one another?
Um, so when I think about our team and here in EMEA, and I'm working closely with Casey Phelps, who's leading the EMEA operations, and Monique Caster, who's responsible for account management. We make sure that we, loop up with each other frequently and often, face to face in a virtual meeting right now, but we'll send each other emails or Zoom chats or whatever, but sharing ideas, sharing questions with each other, keeping communication open. And if you've got a question or you're not sure about something, kind of leaning on each other. So that's something that we definitely do a lot. And I love that they ground me, and I think sometimes also I give them an opinion that's maybe something that they haven't thought of, or will take them in a different direction. But I think it's really important, whether it's your team colleagues or whether it's other professionals, your clients or your service providers, to acknowledge when people are doing really great jobs. Again, whether you're female or not female, but I do think we as women need to champion each other because we're not always good at celebrating our successes. So success and celebrating success with other women is really important, and it helps to boost that confidence like I was talking about earlier. The more you kind of get the confidence, the easier it is to kind of find your way and be I think comfortable in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, rather than feeling like, oh, I'm not quite sure, I'm feeling my way. But you actually become more, it's more natural.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that, have you experienced or seen women leaders in the industry or at Graebel, creating paths for leadership for others, or maybe other people with non-traditional backgrounds as well?
Definitely. So I have, you hear about managers who don't want to lose their team members, right? Because they want to keep the good ones in their team. And without naming names, I know people who are, pro kind of pushing their team members out into other areas. And I definitely see that with my female colleagues. Not saying not with men, but I've definitely, got living, working examples of female colleagues who are like, oh, that person would be great for this role. They're really, and again, maybe it's a female thing. We're more open and voicing these things together. But yeah, I think definitely there's encouragement, and I think that's important because, again, for a company to be successful, we want to grow and nurture our talent, and not be, trying to keep people in a role in a team, because that's when they become disengaged, and then that's probably when they look elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I love that. I like that. I think that kind of connects back to you just explaining even how you came into be in the position that you're in, that it wasn't necessarily something you were actively seeking out and really, gunning after. So it's kind of interesting to paint a picture of sort of the
Mm.
culture and the way things work at
I think
Gribble.
like I came, early in my career, I was in a couple of Japanese companies, Japanese electronics companies, and they're all about the network. So really, looking at your network, using your network, internal, external, asking people to help endorse you or give you insights into other, stakeholders is really important. And that's given me that focus and like knowing how I'll create my path. I might not know what the path is, but I'll know who's going to help me get there.
That's nice. It's almost, I feel like, maybe more important to know who's going to help you versus where exactly you're going, because you never know.
Yeah.
You got to be open and
and
flexible, like
and
you
it's
said.
a small world, so if we don't help each other as well, mobility is a really small world. So who might be your rival today might be your your client tomorrow, or even one of your colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. You said something earlier that stuck out to me that I just thought was interesting. Just talking about how, it can be intimidating to walk into a room full of men and learn to kind of assert yourself, share your opinions. I'm curious, kind of in a more broad sense, if you can share any barriers or specific challenges you faced to get to where you are today.
um I mean, so many stories through my career, but I think, again, just kind of preconceived ideas about being a female. So, a great example is I was very young and not long graduated. I did a couple of years working in London as an exec assistant, and then I moved out to Germany for a while. And I was looking for work in Germany and went for a job interview. And one of the interviewers in a law firm of all places said, "Oh, you be pregnant?" And I was like, 20, 21, something like that. Uh, and it was a bit of a shock to be asked that. It's certainly not legal in the UK and probably not in Germany at that time, but I was very young and didn't really know how to answer it, but I was kind of shocked. And anyway, said no, no, no. And I think like that's the sort of mentality I was offered the job, but I turned it down. But it's the sort of mentality that one is quite old-fashioned or very old-fashioned and is not needed or wanted in today's world, but two is not going to be the company of choice for our new employees. I've also been told quite a few times, oh no, you're not ready to be promoted in other companies, not this company, but in my corporate life. Oh no, you're not ready to be promoted, you need to prove yourself. Well, I was doing the work, I was getting results, I was a top performer, but would be told time and time again, no, you're not ready to be promoted. But you would see other male colleagues being promoted around you without really achieving so much. And even when I went on maternity leave, I did see another guy come in to take my role at a more senior title and more senior salary. And he was fired after 3 months because he couldn't do the job. So, yeah, I mean, I've been in a life where I've had to prove myself throughout, and always felt like I've proved myself, but still been told I have to wait that bit longer. So it's there are lots of challenges if you're not strong enough at negotiating your case, which again we're not brought up to do so in as women, as maybe men are, for various different reasons. It's hard. It's quite hard.
Do you feel like you've gotten to the point in your career now where you've kind of proven yourself and you're starting to get the recognition in line with the work that you do and the experience that you've had, or does it always feel
I'd like to think so, but I think as well it's still like my character to always be like there's still the next thing. And I think that's part of our challenge as females, that we're always so many people have said to me, women are doers and men are kind of the strategic ones. And that's true, because we're brought up to know we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to multitask. So we're all ingrained in the detail. So I still have to take a step back sometimes and try to think, okay, maybe doing stuff is good, but sometimes we also need to take a step back and not be so ingrained in the detail. Try and offload to other people as well, and just let go a little bit, because we're so ingrained in that doing. That's quite hard to let go.
Certain can be, yeah. Well, Beverly, those were all of the questions that I had just initially written out and that Doris shared with me, but I'll give you the opportunity to share anything we didn't cover, or if there's anything that you'd like to talk about.
Gosh, trying to think. I can't think of anything, unless you can think of anything else that's come to mind while we've been talking.
Well, I am a bit curious. You talked about that you came from, kind of the HR side, and you didn't necessarily, like you said, day one, it wasn't, I need to figure out how to get my way to this executive position. I'm wondering if you think what the impact of that is, if that has made you a different kind of leader than maybe someone that came out the gates hot, ready to go looking for that executive role, or like how that different experience and perspective has kind of influenced who you are, how you lead, how you got to where you are.
I think, so I'll say something that's kind of off the record, if that's okay, first for the context. But
sure, please.
So this is off the record, but my previous manager, please don't publicize this, he was very, everything in his head was planned out and it had to be in his way. And he knew his career path, he had it very clearly mapped out, and he achieved a lot, and then he got to a point where he didn't get to where he wanted to be, and so he left. And so if I talk about being if I now talk on the record, I think what's important is doing a good job, and not necessarily knowing where you're going next, but knowing you want to elevate yourself to the next level without necessarily knowing exactly where it needs to be, but being open-minded about what it would be. Because when I started my role in Graebel, I thought, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to stay in sales. Yeah, this is a kind of stopgap, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to learn a lot about different industries and different clients. But, I'm sure this is going to take me on a path to the next thing. And actually, when I was, kind of successful in my sales career over the last couple of years, it's a really good feeling, but it's always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And the next project, the next project. Never really thinking, oh, I have to be at this point by this date. Because if you think too much like that, then you end up being disappointed and impatient. And I think we all have to be a little bit patient, because you have to wait, especially in a smaller company, you have to wait for the next role to come available. It might not be necessarily within the same function or the same team, but nevertheless, you have to wait for the right opportunities to come through. But if you can keep proving yourself, then the opportunities should avail to you anyway.
I think that I really like kind of the picture that you're painting of, like, it's not about the end goal, it's more about like the experience of like working hard and assessing different opportunities and seeing what comes next to you. I'm curious, do you have any like guiding? I would imagine you've had plenty of opportunities that you've chosen not to pursue.
Yes.
And I'm curious if you have any guiding, principles or like ways of thinking that help you determine like what makes a good opportunity for you, what makes this something you think will help elevate you to your next whatever.
Yeah, I love that question. So I can give you a really great couple of great examples. So early on, I told you that I worked at first when I was at university in a family business, right? So helping a security company. I loved the family. I'm still friendly with them now. And they gave me great career guidance and coaching. I went out into the business world, and then a few years later, they offered me a job as a HR manager. And I even verbally accepted the offer. And then I decided, actually, that's not really where I want to be, because I've learnt French, then I learnt German, then I learnt some Japanese, then I got really into the cross-cultural thing and kind of working with different cultures. But this family business was very UK focused and only UK focused. And I knew for me, that was not what I was passionate about, because I love working with different cultures. So I was like, although it would stretch me from a technical side, capabilities wise, the culture and my personal character wouldn't really, be where I'd really be thriving the most. And then when I came to Graebel, I had looked around the network, I applied for different jobs, I was getting close with some jobs. But what I really liked about Graebel was not just the culture, but actually the opportunity to push myself outside my comfort zone. And I think that's what I've always tried to do with my next role. If I think about all of the different jobs I've taken, there's been an element of it where I'm like, I'm not really comfortable in terms of, I don't know how to do all of these things of the job, but I was confident in myself enough to know that I would be able to get the development I need. I would be able to push myself. It's things like I hate doing presentations or even, doing interviews like this. I'm not saying I hate it, but it's not, it's not always the things I love the most, but it's putting me outside my comfort zone and giving me opportunities to develop myself and push myself further. But getting to know different industries. Getting to know different ways of doing things and really challenging myself. I think that's the recurring theme, is each role has pushed me further to challenge myself.
It's a really nice guiding principle. Thank you for sharing that. Well, if there's anything else that you'd like to share, I would obviously be interested, but no pressure.
I think
do you have any thoughts?
Just last kind of thoughts is just, my advice for anyone would be, challenge yourself, don't be scared, and you're better than you think you are. And that's, I guess, difficult for us sometimes to think, but it's very true. And you never know how you're going to deal with a scenario till you're in it, but we all cope better than we think we will. So that's my kind of lasting message.
great message. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
You can go ahead and stop
Recording stopped.
if you'd like.